day everyone, I am Izelmay Dagapond. I will be the first reporter for this group. So, our topic is about the environmental crisis and sustainable development. And here's the learning outcomes that at the end of this lesson, you should be able to first discuss the origins and manifestations of global environmental crisis that relate everyday encounters with pollutions, global warming. Number two is desertification, ozone depletion, and many others with a larger picture of environmental degradation. And the last, number three, is to examine the policies and programs of governments around the world that addresses the environmental crisis. So, thinking a problem for this topic is example. If you live in a metropolitan Manila and travel to work or to school every day, the moment you step out of your home is you are already exposed to the serious problem humanity that faces today, and that is the deteriorating state of the environment. So as you walk out of the gate, the fetid smell of uncollected garbage hits you and you go near the trash bin curious about what is causing the smell. So you rotting the vegetable, the dead rat, and a bunch of what not packed in plastic. So kining tulo ka mga basura nagpaila na sa pipila ka mga problema sa kinaayuhan. So we need to solve this one, like ang mga utanon kinahanglan idugang sa usa ka mga compost pile, like then pwede sa ato i-fertilize ang ilaga nga gisunog inya takalaglabay so ato ilubong. The third one is ang mga plastic susama sa atong mga miga dili pwede na to i-reuse, i-recycle tungod kay dili siya sama sa laing duha ka basura, dili kini madunot. The world's leading environmental problems. The Conserve Energy Future website lists the following environmental challenges that the world faces today. First, the depredation caused by industrial and transportation toxins and plastic in the ground. Like sa itong nakita sa picture lang tawa, like ang kahugaw sa sapa ug dagat on water beads by oil spills and acid rain ug ang paglabay sa mga basura sa dumping site. Number 2, lang tama sa picture, the changes in global weather patterns and the surge of ocean land temperatures leading to a rise in sea levels plus the flooding of many lowlands areas across the world. And the third one is overpopulation. Overpopulation is an undesirable situation in which the current human population exceeds the Earth's real carrying capacity. Plus, the several causes of contributions to overpopulations, which is overpopulation is caused by a variety of factors, including lower death rates that improve medical services and depletions of valuable resources. If a sparsely inhabited place cannot sustain life, it can become a highly populated. So, growing advances in technology sa matag umaabot nga tuig nakaapekto sa mga tao sa pagdaghan paagi usa niini mga abilidad sa pagluwas sa mga kinabuhi o paghimo sa usa ka mas maayo nga medical nga pagtambal alang sa tanan. Ang direktang resulta niini kay mao ang daghan sa kinabuhi ug pag-spread sa population. And number 4, as we can see in the picture, the exhaustion of the world's natural non-renewable resources, from the oil reserves to mineral to portable water. So there are 4 major types of non-renewable resources: the oil, natural gas, the coal, and the nuclear energy. So oil, natural gas, and coal are collectively called fossil fuels. Fossil fuels were formed within the earth from dead plants and animals over the billions of years, hence the name fossils and fuels. Then the fifth one is a waste disposal catastrophe due to the excessive amount of water unloaded by the communities and landfills as well as on the oceans, and the dumping of the nuclear waste. So as we can see in the image, they are all used products that need and require to be in an appropriate disposal to limit their harm to the environment. So waste disposal is therefore a systematical actions for managing waste from its origin. So it's final disposal. It includes the incinerations, burning, burial, and landfill sites or discharge at sea, lakes, a river, and recycling. So as an individual, we are responsible and can start by our own to pertains the 3 R's: the reuse, reduce, and recycle. So, local communities, authorities, and states need to put more effort toward the educations of waste management. Essentially, this law can help to reduce the levels of unsustainable waste, improve problematic environmental across the globe. So, with the implementation and consistent practice of the three R's, communities and local authorities as well as the state will not only be able to manage waste but also to move in the direction of an achievement zero waste.
So hi everyone, I am Seiko Iguchin. I am the second reporter for this group and I am going to continue the discussion about the world's leading environmental problems. So the sixth problem that we have here is the destruction of million-year-old ecosystem and the loss of biodiversity that have led to the extinction of particular species and the decline in a number of others. So when we say loss of biodiversity, this means ang paggamay or ang pagkawala sa mga living organisms or living things in our environment. So unsa may mga hinungdan ani, what are the causes no? Ngano there's a loss of biodiversity. So usa nga rason ana or one of the cause no is the habitat loss. When we say habitat loss, pagkawala sa puloy-anan sa animals or sa plants or any living organisms in our environment. Next is the overexploitation or the extreme hunting or fishing pressure. So which we are very familiar with fishing pressure no nga. Wherein makakita ta sa balita nga there are fishermen who uses kanang dinamita to catch fish, which is not good because naay mga ubang isda na maapil og kamatay nga mga gagmay pa, and it does not only affect the fishes no, but also the coral reefs or any other living organisms in the water or in the sea. So the next one or the next problem that we have here is the reduction of oxygen and the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere because of deforestation, resulting in the rise in ocean acidity by as much as 150% in the last 250 years. Wherein in this one, we are very familiar with deforestation, right? Since elementary, it has been discussed what deforestation is. So because of deforestation, no, mas mo-overpower o mas malabuan sa carbon dioxide ang oxygen, or it can lead to ocean acidity no, or ocean acidification, wherein people are just unsa man putol kay putol na sila og kahoy no without thinking what is the effect no, unsa man na siya makaapekto sa mga tawo ang pagputol og paputol nila og trees without planting no. So people are just thinking about receiving something from the environment without thinking about how to give back sa no to the environment, which is very simple ra gid unta. If you know how to cut trees, then dapat kibawsad ka unsaon imo pagpuli sa imong gikuha, di ba? And because of deforestation, dili lang tungod nga nalabuan sa carbon dioxide or mas dako ang percentage sa carbon dioxide kaysa sa oxygen, but it can cause us ocean acidification, wherein it can affect the living organisms in the water no or sa dagat, such as ang mga coral reefs, ang mga shells dira pwede na sila matunaw because of ocean acidification, at pwede sa siya makapatay sa mga isda. So next one we have here, so this is the eighth problem we have here, the depletion of the ozone layer protecting the planet from the sun's deadly ultraviolet rays due to the chlorofluorocarbons or CFCs in the atmosphere. So in this one, when we say depletion of the ozone layer, mo ni siya ang pagnipis sa ozone layer nga nagaprotekta sa ato from the ultraviolet rays or the UV rays, no? And what will happen if the ozone layer will get thinner and thinner? So mahitabo ana is the people will get exposed too much na sa UV rays or ultraviolet rays, which is not very good because it can cause a lot of diseases for us people. So usa na ana is pwede ta magkasakit, magka-cancer sa ato panit, and also cataract as well. So maapektuhan sa atong mata. So dili lang na siya makaapekto dato mga tawo, but also to the plants and or any other living organisms in our environment. So the next one or the next problem that we have here is the deadly acid rain as a result of fossil fuel combustion, toxic chemicals from erupting volcanoes, and the massive rooting vegetables filling up garbage dams and or left on the streets. Wherein this one, this may be get from the natural phenomena such as the volcanic eruption, but mostly of them or most of them kay tungod sa human activities such as karang sa mga factories, sa coal burning, power plants, mga ana. And acid rain is very dangerous not just for the plants but for the animals as well. So sa plants is makaapekto na siya wherein if the plants are able to absorb acid rain, what will happen is mamatay sila or dili nila kaya mo survive, makalesen na sa ilang kinabuhi. And for the animals as well, if the soil will absorb acid rain or ang mga hayop dili na sila makaagwanta or dili sila makasurvive mupuyo sa place wherein it nakakuha na siya, nakasuyop na siya pag-ayo og acid rain, no, such as the soil, no, dili na sila magdugay dira because it can also kill the animals. Next is that we have here the water pollution arising from industrial and community waste residues seeping into underground water tables, rivers, and seas. We are very familiar with this one, water pollution. Grabe, magkakita naman kay guro tag mga dagat-dagat basura na nagag plastic galutaw. No, we are very familiar with that. And unsa man day mahitabo na, 'di ba? Salig ra ta maano dra man ang sagbot, 'di ba? Kuan ana, so abi na tug wala na or na ay some of us or like a lot of us know good no what is the effect no ana nga paglabay-labay nato og basura sa tubig or bisan asa lang. But they unsa man di nila some of them is unsa man dili gyapon mobuhat sa sakto no bisag kibaw sila unsay epekto ana sa atoa. And ang pinaka maapektuhan jud no pinaka maapektuhan ang water pollution is the living organisms in the water such as the fish no mga coral reefs no we kita ta daghan kita makita na clips sa Facebook no nga na yung isda na ni namatay na kanang naay mga plastic sulod sa lawas, di ba? We are very familiar with that kind of scenarios good. And which is not very good because unsa man, ang mga naa sa dagat is something na kailangan sa nato and water pollution does not only mean about lang sa dagat, no, but also to the water that unsa man gamito nato sa pagligo baron, gamito nato sa pag-inom baron, no? Which is it can also be harmful to us people, no? Kung hugaw atong mainom na tubig or polluted atong mainom na tubig. So the next problem that we have here is the urban sprawls that continue to expand as the city turns into megalopolis, destroying farmlands, increasing traffic gridlock, and making smog cloud a permanent urban fixture. So in this one, no, we because it talks about like the development in a certain area, no, like ma-industrialize na certain area, na may mga infrastructures, buildings, and ano mo ano di ay unsa nga problema man na nindot noon, di ba? Ma-develop na ang certain area, ma-develop na ang lugar, anong problema man na? Yes, it can help us economically for our economic growth, no? Makatabang na siya. But the thing is for the environment, it can affect us in a negative way. Good. Why is that? Because the more na magkadaghan ang buildings, infrastructures, mas daghan na ang tawo no in a certain area, what will happen? Daghan vehicles, and the vehicles will unsa man aside sa makaproduce siya traffic, makakuha na siya og pollution no, naabog sa aso sa mga makina, sa aso sa mga tambutso, di ba? Makakuha na siya og pollution. And aside from that, it can also affect the agriculture side no, agricultural factor. Why is that? Makakita ba mo sa mga syudad og like may mga mais na tanong, di ba? In the provinces, very daghan ko ano, gamitong negosyo ang pagpananom such as sa mga palay, such as sa mga mais, o yun, sa pala, free sila mo tanom, di ba? Most especially if they have their own kanang yuta. But here, bisan na kayuta niya, siminto man ang mga yuta, di ba? Siminto man ang mga nakapaligid. Urbanized naman, di ba? Urban area naman na siya. So what will happen is na-surrounded na mga buildings, mga concrete na mga balay baron. So it is very impossible for you to plant or to make a business no you by agriculture no or using agriculture. And so the next one or the second to the last problem is the pandemics and other threats to public health arising from waste mixing with drinking water, polluted environments that become breeding grounds for mosquitoes and disease carrying rodents and pollutants. So in this one, these are the problems no that we are able to get from unsa man sa mga hugaw nga naa sa atong mga surroundings, like such as water pollution that has been discussed earlier. Usay makuha nato ana nga mga sakit, diba? If we are able to drink hugaw na tubig, what will happen? Pwede ta magka-diarrhea, no? If naay galanaw dira na tubig, what will happen? Pwede na siya puy-an og mosquito, and og puy-an og mosquito, pwede ta magka-dengue, so magkasakit sad ta, diba? So these are unsa man mga sakit na pwede nato makuha or posible nato makuha tungod sa mga environmental issues or problems or hugaw nga naa nato or nakasurround sa atoa. Okay? So the last environmental problem that we have here is a radical alteration of food systems because of modifications in food production genetics. So in this one, it talks about how we consume and produce food, no? Sa mga kausaban sa ato pag-consume o pag-produce sa food. Wherein, in producing the food, no, there are a lot of changes again. One of that is like sa example is sa mga pagtanom, example sa mga gulay, vegetables. Before unsa man mogamit sila fertilizers, but the fertilizer that they are using is unsa man very organic, no, like manure, diba? We are very familiar with that manure. Pero right now we are able to buy fertilizers, no, in the market. We are able to buy also insecticides, mga ipang spray nato para sa mga tanom, diba? Para makaproduce or makapamunga ba dayon, diba? Dali mga ana nga products. Unlike before nga, very organic, very natural that they are using. And with regards to food that we are consuming, sad, before, ato pagkaon unsa man, like they don't really use a lot of preservatives. But right now, no, pwede na makapalit na lang kag frozen goods, no, canned goods, diba? There are a lot of food na or foods nga you are able to buy na nga ready to cook na or luto na jud, diba? Yun ana, like mga sardines, century tuna, mga yun ana. So there are a lot. The food that we are consuming right now is contains a lot of preservatives na gyud. So there's a lot of changes when it comes to our food system, our food intake, no, sa pag-consume nato sa food, and also sa pag-produce sa mga tawo og pagkaon. There's a lot of changes na sa with regards to that matter. So many of these problems are caused by natural changes, such as volcanic eruptions, release toxins in the atmosphere, and the lower of world's temperature. So in this one, aside sa it is from a natural phenomenon, but also what we are experiencing right now, the problems that we are experiencing right now with our environment because of our human activities, because ng mga binuhatan sa mga tao. Therefore, I want you to always remember that to be responsible, no, and accountable in every action that you are going to make with regards to our environment, and always think, no, how will it affect not just you, but the people that surrounds you, but the people in the world, no? How does it affect us people? If you are going to do things that can affect negatively to our environment. So that's it. I am Sikoy Gucci, and I am now giving the floor to the next reporter. Thank you so much.
Good day, everyone. I will be the next reporter. I am Shanime S. Hainkanto, and the next topic contains one of the most difficult global issues to combat, which is man-made pollution. As we all may know, pollutants nga gipanghimo nato can endanger human health, ug dili ra kana since it can also harm our natural environment as well. And now let us know what is man-made pollution. So man-made pollution is generally a byproduct of human actions such as consumption, waste disposal, industrial production, transportation, and energy generation. So most of the things that we do all have consequences, good. And things that I've mentioned earlier are some situations which lead to pollution. And now let us tackle the several types of man-made pollution, which are air, water, soil, and radioactive pollution. So the first is air pollution. So when does air pollution occur? So it occurs when there are emissions from factories, cars, planes, or aerosol cans, and it can also include secondhand cigarette smoke from humans. And the second is water pollution. It happens when man-made waste chemicals contaminate bodies of water, such as oceans, lakes, rivers, and streams. The third is soil pollution. So it occurs when harmful man-made chemicals leak into the soil, and the most common causes of it rather are the irresponsible disposal of garbage from industrial or urban sources and agricultural pesticides as well. The last one is radioactive pollution. So this occurs when there are poor disposal of nuclear waste, the unintentional release of core material from a nuclear power plant, or it can also be the detonation of a nuclear explosive device rather, which can all result in radioactive pollution. Next, let us tackle some areas affected by pollution. First, let us see in our own country, which is the Philippines. Philippines in 2021 was ranked as the 64th country when it comes to air pollution, and the first city which contributed more to it is Taguig NCR. According to the DANR in late 2016, 80% sa atuang air pollution came from motor vehicles, while the 20% came from stationary sources such as factories and open burning. Next is the Saudi Arabia. The most common problem nila which cause the pollution kay ang mga sandstorms, which is from traffic and industrial waste, and because of it, the World Health Organization declares Riyadh as one of the most polluted cities in the world. As for India, the air pollution was worse in 2015. According to a report published in The Lancet, which is a peer-reviewed journal, ang country na India was responsible for about a quarter of the estimated 9 million pollution-related deaths in 2015. It also emphasizes the worrisome rise in disease load and mortality from various types of pollution. And in Nigeria, 94% of its population is exposed in pollution. It is because many Nigerians rely on generators and at home owing to unreliable electrical sources which emit hazardous fumes in frequently poor ventilated areas. As for Gaborone, which is the capital of Botswana, and ang rank nila is in ika-7 sa most polluted city in the world. Mostly it is because of the emission of aerosols and other gases from car exhaust, burning of wood or garbage, indoor cooking, and diesel-fueled electric generators, and petrochemical plants as well, and those are projected to quadruple by 2030. In Malanchhand, India, there are high levels of toxic metal into water streams. The biggest copper mine in Malanchhand in India discharges those. And also, waste coming out of coal, copper, and gold mines flowing out into the rivers and oceans are the ones nga makaguba gyud sa sea life. Next is China. Well, it is in the tailings from the operations of the Shanxi Mancao Ecological Mining Limited, wherein it produces 12,000 tons of gold per year, and this have caused pollution and safety problems. In addition, coal-fueled vehicles and factories are becoming more widespread, and kani kay contribute also to the country's dangerously high levels of air pollution. Next is West Virginia. Coal mines as for West Virginia for over a century, coal mines in there have pumped chemical-loaded wastewater directly into the ground, wherein it can leach the water table and turn what had been drinkable water into a poisonous cocktail of chemicals. The next is West Africa, and in West Africa, pollution in there has affected the atmospheric circulation system that controls everything from wind down to the temperature to rainfall across the region. And as for Asia and the Atlantic Ocean, the Asian monsoon in turn had become the transport of polluted air sa stratosphere. And ang mga scientists kagilink na nila ron nga ang Pacific storms daw kay relevant sa dissemination sa pollution in Asia. And ang aerosol is labeled as the culprit of changing rainfall pattern sa Asia ug sa Atlantic Ocean. And these climatic disruptions are believed to cause drought all over Asia and Africa. Next will be the China rivers. So in China rivers, more than 20 years ago, China claimed that there were over 50,000 rivers in their country. But in 2013, as a result of climate change, wherein it's also caused by the pollution that traps heat around the earth, uncontrolled urban growth, and the rapid industrialization, 28,000 sa kaninga rivers had disappeared or vanished.
An archive article in the journal Scientific American blamed the pollution for contributing to more than 500,000 premature deaths each year at the cost of hundreds of billions of dollars. So if wala pa dyan mo kasabot, unsa akong gimin sa kanang people's health, which is maka-affect ang air pollution or man-made pollution, which is gihimo sa natong mga tao. For example, sa mga company, like big company, for example, Coca-Cola, like mga inunana niya. Nasa diri sa amu, diri sa Toledo, like, as in, makita dyan ni mo ikabugas sa aso diri sa pinakababaw, kay itong na dyan siya, guys. So, kani, ang man-made air pollution or pollution nga gihimo sa tao, kay nakakos, og naman dyan mga, di mo na malikayan, nga na premature baby, like, mugawas sila, wala pa sa saktong buwan. So, ilang air, dapat, nag-need pa silang air. Nya ilang matake nga air, kay apil ni ang pollution, which is makakos, og kamatayon nila. O, so mo to guys, for example, na nga, kanang, nakapikto jud siya sa kanang health sa usa ka tawo or dili lang sa usa ka tawo kay like hundred of premature babies na ang nawala tungod sa pollution. Pero dili na sa kalibutan kundi sa radyo na nato kay of course kita may gahimo na, so ato ang fault. Also, the International Agency for Research on Cancer blamed the air pollution for 223,000 lung cancer deaths in 2010. So back in 2010, mas daghan jud ang namatay tungod sa air pollution. Dili wala kay kanang namatay ni siya kay tungod sa air pollution. Namatay siya tungod sa cancer niya. Ang nag-cause sa cancer kay ang air pollution. So guys, kanang same ganina, like gikan kog Cebu padung Toledo kay gisakay mo kog bus. As in, pagsakay nako sa bus kay itong na jud kay ang gibugwak nga aso, like itong na jud siya. Maski nakugay nga napo sa bus kay magkaubo na jud ka, like mayon jud ka naggrabe na jud ang pollution diri sa kalibutan. So mao to pag 2010, balik ta pag 2010 kay of course, I'm dyan na research sa gasa, like, or shall we say survey, marag survey nga na bakit in 2010, daghan ang namatay sa lung cancer. Yang cause ana kay dili ra ka ng unsa na dira nga cause, but air pollution, which is kita ra sa nang gahimo nga problema. Kay man-made air pollution man kita may mga tao man ang nagpagawas ana, for example katong mga dagko nga company, mga motorbikes, mga car, mga vehicles and etc. dira. Like kita mismo nga himo na kita ra say mag-suffer of course. In Indonesia and Malaysia, the link between forest fire and mortality have been well established. So nagkagrabe na jud, like the more magkagrabe ang air pollution, the more magkagrabe ang pollution, the more sad magka-cause og daghang mga damages or like pariyaning fire forest or mortality. And kibaba mo guys nga ang mga effect if naa niya sila kay disrupt of transportation, communication, may possibilities nga ang pagkuan sa water kay ma-stop na, or like ang transportation na to kay pwede na mahunong muna sa atong ipangbuhat kay kita ra say mag-suffer. Like kung unsa man gani akong gisulti ganina, kung unsa man gani atong action nga gitake, sumbalik ra jud sad na nato. And ang pinakasad nga part here is that it has been the poor who are the most severely affected by these environmental problems. Kaya of course, kinsay nagpagawas anang mga itom kay nga aso sa kinababuan, ang mga dato, ang mga kumpanya nga mga dagko. Kinsay nagpagawas ng mga vehicle nga kanang mga lami kayo, mga dinagko nga sakyanan, ang mga dato rasad. Nya kisay mag-suffer. May nga mag-suffer sa tanan, but ang mas mag-suffer jud kay mga poor, kay if maigo sila na nga sakit, dili sila dali dayon makaingon nga magpatambal ta ani kay walay ika-afford. And also kanang maigo jud permi sa mga sakit guys, kay para kabantay man jud mo na der sa city sa Cebu kay daghan kay matug sa gawas. For example, mo na tanay dinggi kasi first maigo sila jud mismo. Suluoy kay mga pobre guys ang dato musamot ka dato niya if ever guys kuan sila masakit, matik diretso ta diri nga ospital dito sa pinakamahal. Ang mga pobre kay wala jud muna. And in India, studies on adult health revealed that 46% in Delhi and 56% in Calcutta have impaired lung function due to air pollution. So dili ra ni sa usa ka nasud or usa ka barangayan maka-affect ang air pollution, but dagan jud kay guys, the more kanang dagag factories, dagag vehicles. Nga sa India ba kay kasagaran ba sa ila kay na motorbike which is ga-produce pud og kanang aso. So the more magkadagan ng air pollution, the more sad kanang makaget og kanang disease or like cancer ang mga people nga nadra nga community, or like sila ra Japon ang makaget mas dili pa mingon sila nga wala mo ko nagkuan og air pollution, wala mo ko nagkuan ng factory, wala mo ko ni trabaho dira, di mo ko una na. But sad to say, ikaw nga nga community, maskin pag mana ka nga wala jud kani apil ana, dili mamili ang pollution, dili mingon nga kani akong unahon kay siya may gapagawas nako, siya may gahimo nako. But tanan like ikaw na ka ng society, ikaw na mo dira maapil jud ka. So kita dapat matter jud ang people's health, like mingon ta mo take tag action, like dili lang ta mingon nga luluyan niyo ginakuan siya kanimo ko mga tao diri na dili ta murag mangsisi or like mingon nga kanang dapat nasa tay action, kay the more mo take tag action, the more na possibility nga mo balik ang sa una nga atong gigusto nga palibot. And in China, the toxicity of the soil has raised concern over food security and the health of the most vulnerable people, especially the communities and those living in factories, cities. As what I've said ganina, kay if inyong city kay na factory or like parehasa mo diri sa tulad city, di man malikayan, like, na jud ang factory, langan magmuna og hawa mo diri factory kay di po ganahan masakit. So ang makaluluoy same sa China, kay na factory nga to sa ilaha, nya mas luoy ang kanang duol, like duol na jud kay sa factory kay kinsa mo lang hapan ang kaugaling mong aso ngay pagawas, alangan na magbuhanya pa na nga pagawas aso man na sa ay adto sa kog Paris kay ganahan dili man kung kinsa toy duol mo ra si makalanghap. So luoy kayo ang mga people nga people nga na surrounded or like naas ka ng kilid-kilid ana nga factory kay sila ra pud gihapon ang mapiktuhan. And in metropolitan Manila, 37% or 4 million people of the population live in slum communities areas where the effects of urban environmental problems and threats of climate change are also most pronounced. O kabaw naman dito sa Metro Manila sila may pinaka-prone sa tanan. Like ay dili na sa tanan kay if bagyo-bagyo kay maglayo man sila gamay. Pero sila ang pinakagrabe makaproduce og air pollution kay nanay train as in kay ano to kung ating nga pag nakalaag mi siya Manila to kuyog siyang friends like lahi ra jud kuno kayo of manata ala trafficking Cebu dagan kay sakyanan lahi ra jud kuno kayo ang Manila guys like over daghan jud kay lang sakyanan niya the more daghan ang vehicles nga nagdaghan the more daghan ang population the more daghan ang pollution ang magawas like the more biya daghan ang sakyanan daghan ang aso nga magawas so muna nagsuffer sila like o kato over or like 37%, which is the 4 million people nga nasa Metro Manila. Yang, kasagaran sad. Masa ni na-observe sa kong ating, dagan jud kay kuan to. What do we call this one? Kanang, dito na, bas kanang dagan kay balay-balay. Dagan kay balay-balay, nga sikit-sikit. Which is if nay, buta na to, nay sunog kay. Dali ra, nalimot ko sa term, pero, like nga na, kanang dagan kay, nalimot ko sa term guys. Pero kanang, dagan jud kay tao ba? Nagsikit-sikit ang balay niya. Napayuban nga to kay, kuan ko no, dagan kay mga, kanang buang-buang kanang taong grasa ba nara sa gawas nagpuyo or like wala sila permanent nga wala nara sa gawas sa grasa diri sa Cebu kay murag makuan pa man nato ma carry pa nga kanang agamay ra may hapra pero sa ngadto sa Manila like tagan jud kay maski nasa ka nga barangay madto makakita jud ka nga naay mga ingana sa gawas-gawas so mo to kanang if na changes or like for example climate change makaingon jud ta nga luoy jud ang health sa people nga naa sa Metro Manila kay dili ta na nasa saktong butangan or like naikaya ba ang uban kay pareha rin ana like nagtaong grasa or ingana niya if ever na mga sakit-sakit mo to kung giingon sila jud ang unang maigo. And one of the major ironies of urban pollution is that the necessities that the poor has the access and source of the problem. Mo jud na kung gisulti ganina nga sa mga unsa pang problema nga maabot, mabagyo pa man, ma air pollution pa man na or whatsoever nga problem ang maabot, ang luoy jud or maigo jud sa ang permi jud maigo or like ang mamor matagos sa puso or the main target dili sa dami ng target jud sila pero sila ang giluoy mo ni mga pobre jud guys kay if ever ako ay no dili ako if ever kanang nasa gawas matug kanang mga taong grasa if ever maigo na sila mo ginagtaong grasa na sila kay wala sila kapuy-an walay nag-take care nila luoy sila nang nag-take care as in wala tanan niya maigo pa jud sila sakit asa man sila kay kagasto di ba wala jud mabito to pag COVID or pandemic ano jud ko asa ka gipambutang ang mga ingana ano kanang mga badyaw mga tutaw sa gawas kay alangan maghipo yun sana nila paghipos nya mo sila balik katulgan mag-lockdown muna kung pangutan o nya ang pollution kay if ever kay mo to sa if nagay pollution like mudako mayong pollution ang luoy jud ay luoy man tatanan pero ang pinakaluoy jud kay kanang mga pobre nga nara sa gawas like wala balay wala tanan kay if ever masakit sila katuba if ever maabot nila asa man sila pang gasto para maayo sila asa sila pang hospitalize asa sila pagpalito ka ng mga medicine nga i-take dapat wala sila ra jud ang makaluluoy sumoto. And a lot of mode of transportation affect our health and poor health only afford the motorbike kanisad kita kay mga mga Pinoy kay mga tapulan man umang ko jud ko na kay ako tapulan man sad ko so kabantay sad ko diri sa Toledo or maskin ngadto sa Cebu kay dagan jud ang gamit og motorbike kay nganuman mas dali o mas barato kaysa magsakyanan. Dato nakita magsakyanan tatanan. Pero the more magamit dagdagan as in may pa magbike na lang tatanan kapuya sa day. The more magamit tag mga motorbike, mga car or whatsoever except sa kanang biker jud itself. Kuan siya. The more magpagawas og daghang aso. the more pollution na naman, guys. So, dili jud ta makaingon nga, hala, uy, tungod yun sa mga, dili mo na kay kita tanan, maskin ako, kibaw ko nga, kuan, dili lang sila ang himo ng mga pollution kay kita. Ako, masakay mo kong jeep, kita pulan man ko niyang jeep, kapag awas mga pollution nga, itom, kasi itom masagay mga pollution sa jeep, guys. So, it means, ako sa, gahimo sa kong pollution. Okay? Apil man ko, nisakay man ko. Nya, nasa motor, nasa car, o kagawas na, itom, apil na siya. Nya, dagan, oh, dili jud alat, alat dagan. Pero feel ko, halos tanan transportation, guys, kay, maka-affect jud sa itong health. Kaya halos tanan mong transportation, kay kapag awas naman ka ng, itom aso. Ano na siya. And, these massive environmental problems are very difficult to resolve because governments believe that for their countries to become fully developed, kanisan, dito ta maingon nga kanang na maghimo ra taga dito, plano ra taga may human na ni. Kikibaw mo ang gobyerno sa guys, mo na ba na? Lalo the more daghan og kanang factories diri sa, for example, ang Philippines kay manonog daghan kay factories. Lami kayo preschool kay sa paminaw sa mga government kay lo kiti pinakadato diri, oh my god, magmana sila nang murag ka-proud nila pero di ay na jud ay apekto na to kay okay na for example kita pinakadagan og factories pinakanindot og mga factories pero wa sila kabaw unsay gibuga sa factories which is pollution na guys, pollution ya unsa man kana maski pamingon ta nga dili na ta o kana pareha na mga transportation nga atong gipanggamit or kanang naikuan nailami nga sakyanan mabot diri sa Pilipinas malipay ang government kay ba mo ano kasi mabot diri Ferrari na malipay sila kay ang tax padung sa government oh mo na siya guys nya di sa tagaingon nga hala dali on tani gawoy pahawa tani ang sakyanan pack pahawa tani ang mga factories pack kaya naman ang government wala na madawat nga tax ang Philippines di na known or like dili na kanang Philippines kaya ang government man good what matters nila is kanang kung asa sila mabuhong or maskin ako gay kay if ever kay kanang dili ko nga part kay kanang buhong ko or nindot ko diri like manon ko why not dili ko diri ari jud ko sa kanang luya na nila kay so moto dili ni dali ma-resolve ang problema sa pollution kay ang government kay nagpaluyong sa dani. And motorbike, it is designed varies greatly to suit a range of different purposes: long distance travel, commuting, cruising sport, including racing, and off-road riding. So as what I've said kanina, kaning motorbike kay mo ni ang pinaka sulit nga transportation if ako'y paingon sa Cebu since traffic man jud kayo niya ikaw ay work ka. Ako walang ko ga-work pero if kamo ba nami ka ilang ga-work inyong parents ga-work hindi sila kanang programa mata sila alas 6:30 maligo pa sila niya sa nila work ang kuan man gud ang abati sa mga car kay the more nga daghan kayo the more traffic pero ang motorbike kay pwede ra ka maglusot-lusot bisag asa if asa ka ganahan mo lusot so mo na ang motorbike kay usa sa pinakanindot nga transportation ang ubang gamiton ni racing kanang dire man ka sa TCH Trans Central Highway basta sila kay bawo kana ding aso nga gibugwak ana kay makapikto din na nato so mo na guys dapat unaon jud before ta mo take action. And according to the Center of Science and Environment in Delhi, India, two-wheelers form of staggering 75% to 80% of the traffic in the most Asian cities. Mao to siya ang akong di ako nagisulti guys. Ang mga two-wheelers or like kanang mga dako nang kakasakyan na makakos mag traffic mo na magamit og motorbike. Igatudi sila ang motorbike dili na makakos og pollution nga magpagawas man gyapon nag-aso. No, di ba? And motorbikes burn oil and gasoline and emit more smoke. More from the word more smoke. Mas daghan ang smoke na mapagawas sa motorbike. Nya kita wala jud kita mga Filipino or whatsoever sa kasalang country. If ni matter gana to atong health or like di pa man ko ganan mawala diri sa kalibutan. May nana. Dapat guys, if ever guys pwede, magtambag ta ngayon, musig pamalit og ani musig pamalit og anak kay kana kababa mo ni-produce ng smoke or if ever gani ganang dili jud nakapalit na jud lines kay baligya nakapalit na so mutambag mo nila guys no pa pero wala basta just lang magkuan if ako'y paingnan no rog na naman jud ng mga motorbike factories di naman na tumalikayan kay na naman jud na diri so atong kuan na lang mahimo is kana mag-plant na lang tag trees kay naminaw ko ato sa una pa grade 6 na ko the more ko na plant tag trees the more ko na musuyop ano na suyo po na sa kahoy ang kuan ang aso nya ikagawas ko na fresh na ko na air. So mo to, if ever gani, maminaw yung family or friends or whatsoever, muna, if matter jud ang health, matter man jud for me, matter jud ang health, except sa mga suicidal person or whatsoever ka na, gananap mo diri sa earth, gananap ko mo kuan. Aba kay people's health matter kay mao jud nay wag mo nay gold karon. Mo nay gold para nato kay atong gold ra jud guys kay atong health, atong kani kay sa mo na kita kwarta nananatutanan pero like nagluya na tam sa among wala Japan. So, mga tanan akong report. I hope naman nasabtan and thank you.
Good day, everyone. I'm Junmar Ostia, and I will continue the topic of Miss Montarde. So, the other mode of transportation that the poor can afford is motorbike. So, it is also called the 2 or 3-wheeled vehicles. So, when we say motorbike, its design varies greatly to suit a range of different purposes. Like, for example, for long distance travel, commuting, cruising, sports, including racing, and off-road riding. So, according to the Center of Science and Environment in Delhi, India, two-wheelers form a stage during 75 to 80% of the traffic in most Asian cities. So it says that motorcycle is one of the reasons that cause traffic mostly in Asia. So motorbikes burn oil and gasoline, and as a result, it emits more smoke like carbon dioxide. So when carbon monoxide is emitted into the atmosphere, it affects the amount of greenhouse gases, which are linked to climate change and global warming. So what does it mean? So it means that the land and the sea temperature increases, changing to ecosystems, increasing storm activity, and causing other extreme weather events. So same as to hydrocarbons and other particulate matter than the gas only 4-stroke engines found in newer motorcycles. So adding to this predicament is the proliferation of diesel-run cars. So these vehicles usually command a lower price because of their durability and lower operating costs. So it is affordable to the middle class due to its lower price. So however, these cars release 4 times the toxic pollution as the buses, which is very bad to our environment. And so next is catching up. So massive environmental problem is difficult to resolve. Why? Because governments think that in order for their countries to properly grow, they must be industrialized, urbanized, and populated by a middle class who have access to the best of modern amenities. So the government prioritized their economy to grow than solving environmental problem. So a developed society must also have the provision to the poor, like for example, giving jobs in the industrial sector, having good public transport system, and cheap food. But the food depends on the country's free trade with other food producers. Next is the modernized agricultural sector. So when we say modernized agricultural sector, it has toxic technologies, like for example, fertilizers and pesticides, and modified crops, highly yielding varieties of rice. So to ensure maximize productivity, it has advantage and disadvantage. The advantage is that it can maximize the productivity, which is good to the economy, and the disadvantage is the fertilizers and pesticides are detrimental to the earth and human health by polluting waterways with toxic chemicals. Next is the model of ideal modern society is the United States until 1970s. So they were a global economic power with a middle class that was envied by the world. So, but United States did not reach this high point without serious environmental consequences. To this very day, United States is the worst polluter in the history of the world. Why? Because United States is responsible for 27% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. So 60% of it comes from the cars and other vehicles plying American highways and roads. The rest are from smoke and soot from small factories, forest fires, as well as methane release from farm and breakdown of organic matter, paint, aerosol, and dust. These ecological consequences, however, are far from the mind of the countries like China, India, and Indonesia, which are now in the midst of frenzied effort to achieve and sustain economic growth to catch up with the West. So in the desire to develop and improve the standard of living of their citizens, these countries will opt to the goals of economic growth and cheap energy, which in turn would encourage energy overconsumption, waste, and inefficiency, and also fuel environmental pollution. So with their industrial sector still having a small share of the national wealth, these countries will be using their natural resources like coal, oil, forests, and agricultural products, and minerals to generate a national kitty that could be invested in industrialization. that would be all for my report. And now I am giving the mic to the next reporter. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Crystal Jean Reyes, and I am the next reporter of the group. Today's extractive economy is, however, a terminal economy. Extractive means extensive extraction of natural resources without provision for the renewal. So, for the terminal, it is both an endpoint in the circuit and an interface connecting spheres of activity. The resources which will eventually have depleted are also source of pollution. In Nigeria, Niger Delta oil companies have caused substantial land, water, and air pollution. So, ang ilang resources, dali ang harot, and ang ilang gikuhaan sa resources is isa po sa source of pollution. Ang mga oil companies sa Nigeria, magagadala ang kaso impact sa pollution. Nigeria is caught in a bind if it wants to maintain its current economic growth path and sustain its drive for poverty reduction. The very polluting oil exploration and production will continue to be a dominant economic activity. If the United States lets its people, developing countries, see the reason, therefore, why they could not sacrifice the environment in the name of the progress. So kung pasagdan na sa United States, yun ang mga tao, ang mga developing countries, kaya mas ma-encourage pa nga i-sacrifice the environment para lang sa progress ng ang country. And this issue begs the question. How is environmental sustainability ensured while simultaneously addressing the development needs of all countries? And the answer to this question are: reduce pollution by using eco-friendly technology, restrain the use of natural resources to ensure availability for the future generations, third, protection of the environment, fourth, social equality in accessing resources, and fifth, continuous economic growth. Climate change. So climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns. These shifts may be natural, such as through variations in the solar cycle, but since the 1800s, human activities have been the main driver of climate change, primarily due to burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. So climate change is what we are experiencing now. Mukalit lang init and uwan, we will never know kay bisag init ang panahon, ang uwan mukalit lang ang bunda. Walay klaro ang panahon, so this is caused by greenhouse gases na nagpataas o guys in the temperature sa kalibutan, which cause disasters like floods, wildfire, and droughts. So according to a certain study, climate change is caused by, first, naturally occurring climate change all over the world. This is because of the energy of the sun using to its earth, and ang kainigikan sila kasi ito ang mga rason sa pagtaas sa temperature which we are experiencing in the present. And the second one is mga human-made activities which cause pagtaas sa carbon dioxide o uban pang greenhouse gases. Governments have their own environmental problems to deal with, but these states' ecological concerns become worldwide due to global warming, which transcends national boundaries. Global warming is the result of billions of tons of carbon dioxide coming from coal-burning power plants and transportation. Various air pollutants and other gases accumulating in the atmosphere. These pollutants trap the sun's radiation, causing the warming of the Earth's surface. With the current amount of carbon dioxide and other gases, this greenhouse effect has speed up the rise in the world temperature. So global warming is the long-term heating of Earth's climate system observed since the pre-industrial period due to human activities, primarily fossil fuel burning, which increases heat-trapping greenhouse gas levels in Earth's atmosphere. The term is frequently used interchangeably with the term climate change, though the latter refers to both human and naturally produced warming and the effect it has on our planet. It is most commonly measured as the average increase in Earth's global surface temperature. The greenhouse effect is responsible for occurring heat waves and long droughts in certain places, as well as for heavier rainfall and devastating hurricanes and typhoons in others. So, ang greenhouse effect is responsible sa nagbalik-balik na kainit o drought sa pipila ka mga lugar. Tingnan man alang sa mas kusog na pagulan o makadaot ng mga bagyo o bagyo sa uban. Until recently, California had experienced its worst water shortage in 1,200 years due to global warming. This changed recently when storms brought rain in the drought-stricken areas. The result, however, is that the state is having some of its worst flash floods in the 21st century. In India and Southeast Asia, global warming altered the summer monsoon patterns, leading to intermittent flooding that seriously affected food production and consumption as well as infrastructure networks. Category 4 or 5 typhoons like the Super Typhoon Haiyan or the Super Typhoon Yolanda that hit the central Philippines in 2013 had doubled, even tripled in some areas of the Southeast Asian basin. Scientists claim that there will be more typhoons in the coming years. In the eastern United States, the number of storms had also gone up, with Hurricane Katrina 2005 and Hurricane Sandy 2012 being the worst.
Hi, this is Chamar Kapo and I'm going to continue glaciers are melting every year since 2002. So by the way, what is glaciers? So glaciers are massive bodies of slowly moving ice. Glaciers form on land and they are made up of falling snow that gets compressed into ice over many centuries. They move slowly downward from the pull of gravity. So glaciers can range in age, form of couple hundred to 1,000 years old. So as we can say that most glaciers today are remnants of the massive ice sheets that covered Earth during the Ice Age. Antarctica has lost 134 billion metric tons of ice. So by with that, the report is the most extensive examination of Antarctic ice loss to date. So based on 24 surveys undertaken by 84 scientists from 44 institutions. So according to these researchers, that Antarctica lost ice at a rate of 72 billion metric tons per year. So in a decade ago. So now, experts estimate that 200 billion tons of ice are lost each year. So a dangerous rate that could be raised sea levels by 6 inches by 2100. So in addition to that is this occurs coastal flooding not just on the east coast of the United States but also in the Gulf of Mexico. Coral reefs in the Australian Great Barrier Reefs are dying. So in the recent years, Australia's Great Barrier Reef have been affected by extreme coral bleaching, with marine heat waves turning into significant section of the reef ghostly into white. And as a result, farm and fishery production capacities have been impacted. So it is all about how man-made climate change endangers into the entire planet. It is possibly the greatest present threat of the humanity. Combating global warming. More countries are now recognizing the perils of global warming. So most people around the world agree that global climate change is a serious issue, right? So in 22 of the 40 centuries, polled, half or more of the public agree that global warming is a major threat. So in every country studied, for example, the majority of the people consider it at least a somewhat serious issue. So despite of broad concerns about climate change vary greatly by region and in the country. In 1987, 192 countries signed the Kyoto Protocol to reduce greenhouse gases, following the United Nations Earth Summit in 1992. So a framework convention on a climate change was finalized here. So the protocol established goals that levels it up to individual countries to determine how best to attain them, while other countries have taken required steps to limit their impact to global warming. For instance, the United States, so the world's largest polluter, is not joining the fight. As I said a while ago, there are certain product rules, many of which require international assistance to get things moving. At the year 2010 World Bank report, the those conclude that the protocol only had a slight impact on reducing global emissions. The Paris Protocol, the Kyoto Protocol, was agreed by 195 countries in December 2015. So this also means that it is based on precise targets that's set by the scientists. It attempts to keep the world average temperature from rising too much. Accords provide governments more leeway in setting national goals, are hence typically passed as internal legislation since they emphasize the consensus building. But however, it isn't clear whether this agreement is founded on the success of the Kyoto Protocol.
I am the next reporter. I'm Evan Sulag. So, in South Africa, communities engage in environmental activities and to pressure industries to reduce emissions and to lobby parliament for the passage of pro-environmental laws. The effect caused by climate change on the environmental, humans, and economy are warmer temperatures, sea level rise, extreme weather will damage property and critical infrastructure, and impact of human health. And their productivity and negatively affect sectors such as agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and tourism. Universities also partners with governments in producing attainable programs of controlling pollution. So, next is University of Chicago's Energy Policy Institute. So, in Chicago, they sent teams to India to work with government offices, business, and communities in coming up viable ground level projects that strikes a balance between urgently needed economic growth and improve air quality. So, in an interdisciplinary research and training institute that focuses on supplying energy to all parts of the world to help sustain economic growth while also reducing its environmental and social consequences. So that's so in Japan. In Japan, population pressures forced the government to work with civil society, groups, academia, and political parties to get the parliament to pass. A blizzard of laws, 14 passed at once in one became known as the Pollution Diet of 1970. So these regulations did not eliminate environmental problems, but today, Japan has some of the least polluted cities in the world. So the CO2 emitted in one country may have severe effects on the climate of another. A 2010 World Bank concluded that the protocol only had a slight impact on reducing global emissions because of the non-binding nature of agreement. So perhaps, no issue forces people to think about their role as citizens of one world than environmental degradation. Everyday person, regardless of his or her race, nations, or creed, belongs to the same world. When one looks at an image of the earth, he or she will be realized that he or she belongs to one world, a world that increasingly vulnerable. In that fight, climate change, one cannot afford simply care about his or her own backyard. So there is no choice but to find global solutions to this global problem. Thank you.